Okay, so before I welcome Laura, I just want to thank you so much for coming. Laura has an absolutely incredible knowledge around women's health, really thinking about our holistic approach for hormonal health. And I'm going to let her explain a little bit more about what she does for work. But from our point of view in Fly Mama, why this is so important is because we are massive advocates about women's health being part of this these moving parts that all sync in together. And it's really about looking after us as mothers, hence the name First Love Yourself Mother, Mama. And it's not, we're not just here to think about exercise and weight loss and beasting ourselves as mothers. This is about loving ourselves as the mother and understanding that in order to really get the most optimal physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, that we really have to tackle it as a holistic moving part of the complex bodies that we are. And you will know that from my teaching with my Pilates, and when I really work through the educational side. And today's talk is all a women's health question and answer, with that in mind. Kelly does a lot of the mental health stuff with her classes as well, and you really get that sort of nurturing matrescence look through that. So with this all in mind, Laura, please do, and thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for answering our members' questions tonight. But please do tell us a little bit more about you as a woman, as a mother, and what you do for work.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Michelle. I'm so excited to be here. So I have been a health practitioner. My specialities are kinesiology and nutrition, and I've been doing it for over 10 years in clinical practice. I also run a college. I teach kinesiology and nutrition and also emotional transformation. They're my babies. And our specialty subjects are blood sugars, adrenals, hormones, digestion, and immune system. And what is fascinating about what I do is that these 5 areas are so interconnected. And when we start to understand, like I see women come into my clinic and they have all of these different symptoms and their hormones are all over their place and their digestion's in a lot of pain and they've got autoimmune conditions and they're really baffled at why they have all of this. And what I'm hoping to share today is connecting all of those so that we get that real understanding that our bodies work so brilliantly. So women are amazing. Our bodies are amazing. So I'm also a mum. So I think what's interesting, I run my business with my business partner Claire, and together we have been through a lot of experiences that we share in common. So I went through 3 years infertility and gave up hope that I could have a baby, and then fell pregnant like you do. And I can explain, I think a lot of it's to do with stress, and when the stress left the building, then I fell pregnant. And I'm going to explain more about that as I go through my talk. I've also been through a miscarriage, which I think is not really talked about enough and is actually quite a traumatic experience, and is usually just sort of fobbed off for women, but actually it's a big deal. It was a really big deal for me. So my son is 3 and glorious. He's at such an amazing age. It's all Thomas the Tank Engine at the moment. So what I want to talk about, shall I get stuck in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say like how I met you as well, because I really we met actually just over a year ago now, when I came on one of your amazing Reclaim Your Life courses, and I was literally, like the name just it explains it, because it's all about reclaiming and taking complete control of your holistic life, I guess, and emotional well-being. And I was really one as well to think about like weight loss and like pregnancy and postnatal. And my daughter was she was just over a year at the time, and I was really struggling with inflammation and swelling around my bowels, and just really unhappy. And I just absolutely love how your approach really helped me to heal myself, but then also now I'm learning so much more to help with my patients as well, and with the mums coming in. So yeah, just I'm so excited to talk to you. So yeah, please crack on.
Love it. I love it. It's one of the, when I'm teaching this in the classroom and I get the from most students, it's just my favorite thing, because there are lots of ways that we look at the body that the traditional medical model don't see, and we are passionate about sharing this information because we want change. We want women to know that there is somewhere that they can go and that they understand their bodies better, so they feel more empowered to be able to do something about it. So yeah, do you want to get stuck in? I think what I was going to focus on is, why is it so hard to lose weight after childbirth? That's definitely something that I want to explore a little bit more in more detail. And I think one of the biggest issues that I see in my clinic is women today, we have it tough. I mean, we are all stressed, we are all on computer screens, we all live very, very full lives, we work full time, we sometimes have families already when we're thinking about having our second child. We're also the generation of women who have been on the pill. It's very, very common that women go on the pill and I'm seeing this more and more as teenagers are going on the pill and are on the pill for many, many years. And this artificial estrogen, and what we're told is that the pill is an estrogen and a progesterone, and it's not. It's an artificial estrogen, and it's something called progestin. And progestin is it's a stimulator in the body, and progesterone is a calmer. And so when we go on the pill, I don't know if you've been on the pill. I mean, it was a car crash with my body. I hated being on the pill, but it is a stressor. And so a lot of women find that they become very anxious on the pill. They pile on weight, and this overriding of hormones. Then we come off the pill and then we hope to fall pregnant, but because we've been overriding our hormones for so long, then we find that infertility is an issue. So we're also the generation of women who are going through IVF, and it's quite commonplace to go through IVF. We also so part of my background is, when I was a teenager, I took a lot of antibiotics for tonsillitis, and that was something that really just disrupted my digestion and my gut microbiome, and that was not something that was understood in the 90s. And so antibiotics tend to get handed out quite willy-nilly, and now we're starting to really understand the knock-on effect that that is having, particularly with women's bodies. And I'll talk more about how digestion really is a key player in hormone balancing. We as modern day women also use a lot of toiletries and a lot of household products that contain endocrine disrupting chemicals. So this is parabens, this is paraffin, this is petroleum, these sodium lauryl sulfate, all these different chemicals that we have in our toiletries, and we're told they're safe for us. And yes, they've had trials on them, but nobody's really looked at the compound effect of, you know, the average woman, I think, uses 18 different products on her skin every day, and these are disrupting our hormones. So we also are seeing a trend of the vegan diet, and as much as I respect it from an ethical perspective, it's really causing quite a lot of hormone issues. We're seeing that women who go on a vegan diet have some symptom relief in the first year, but then they start to really see their periods and their hormone health disrupted after a year of being in a vegan diet, and I can explain more about that as I go through. And it's, you know, 23% of women suffer with IBS. It's so common, you know, a quarter of us are suffering with IBS. And so I don't know a woman who doesn't deal with hormone or digestive or immune issues. It's kind of part of the world. So that's what I see in the clinic. That is what we're dealing with. And so I think I was in clinic for about 8 years, and me and my business partner, we were working and we were seeing all of this coming in, and we were brainstorming. We'd studied lots of different therapies, and we were brainstorming how different hormones work together, and we developed something called the triangle of hormonal health, which I'd quite like to share my screen so that you can see it. Let me see.
For those members on the site, actually, we spoke about your triangle a little bit in our last Q&A session, because I just think it's such an interesting way of looking at the women's hormonal health. So yeah, please do share. If you can share your screen, that would be fab.
It's, when we came up with it, it was this, oh my God, it's such a beautiful way of being able to see the body, and it's such a light bulb moment. So I love technology. So I should be able to share screen. Yeah. Here we go. This is the triangle of hormonal health. And I'm going to talk through each of these different areas because each of them plays such a crucial role. And when we think of hormones, we think of estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. That's kind of what we know. But there are so many different hormones in the body. Hormones are actually what make our body work. They're the messengers that make functions in our body happen. And there is this incredible interplay that happens between, I do this little mime quite a lot, blood sugars, stress hormones, and sex hormones. And when these hormones are out of balance, and because they all work together, they kind of knock on each other, then we see this fallout that happens with the digestive system and the immune system. And the liver's at the center, because the liver's this incredible organ that actually, from cholesterol, from the fat that we eat, makes hormones, but it also clears the hormones down. So we need to be looking at how the liver is producing our hormones, but also how it's detoxifying. So that's why liver's at the center. And if, like, blood sugar hormones, this is absolutely where we're looking at diet. And I think we've got one question that came through about how we eat for energy and how we stop sugar cravings. This is absolutely blood sugar hormones, and this is what I want to look at. And when blood sugar hormones in our diet is out of whack, then we see this increase in our stress hormone cortisol. And when we've got high cortisol and we've got blood sugar hormones that are all over the place, then we start to see this knock-on effect with our sex hormones, with estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. So I'll stop sharing, and I will go through. Let's have a look at, I've got more slides. Is it helpful for me to just share the slides, or do
Yeah, you can share them as you're talking. I think it's really helpful if that helps with your flow. I mean, I think that one of the questions was really talking about why particularly postnatally, or do we find it that bit harder with our eatings and our cravings and digestion and hormones, and what it is about that postnatal journey particularly, because there's certain times in our life as women, and I do believe that it's related to those hormone jumping imbalances, but menopause, like teenage years, sort of again is one age, isn't it, and then pregnancy, and then menopause, and postnatal. So what is it like really with the blood sugars and things postnatally? Why does it seem to sit on our hips?
That's a really good question. And this is the important thing to remember with women, is that we go through massive hormone changes through our lives. Men don't have the same experience. Yes, they go through puberty and there is a menopause, but it's nowhere near what we go through. So I've got some really interesting charts to show you what happens to us hormonally. And if we go into these hormone changes, if we go into puberty, if we go into pregnancy, if we go into postnatal, if we go into perimenopause, if we go into menopause, and we've got this hormone interplay out of whack, then we really notice the effects. We really get the symptoms off the back of it. So blood sugars, most people know of insulin. So insulin is released when we eat sugary carbohydrates, and it's designed to bring the sugar in our blood down, and it also stores it in our liver for when we need energy for later. The thing with insulin is that it is fat storing. It's designed to be fat storing. So when we are eating a lot of carbohydrates, for example, then we are producing a lot of this insulin. And so the first place that I'm going to be looking when I'm looking at diet, when I'm looking at hormones, is what's going on with carbohydrates and what's going on with insulin. But there's other hormones that play a role in blood sugar stability. Leptin. So leptin is it's a fat burning, and it reduces our appetite. We've also got ghrelin, which I like to think of it as gremlins, because it's our hunger hormone. The sounds that our stomach makes when our stomach is empty, that's the ghrelin hormone that's being produced. And we've got cholecystokinin, which is CCK, which is our satisfaction hormone. And this is the glorious thing about hormones, is they all work together in this kind of glorious family of relationship. And so if insulin, and this is a sort of, I love a line chart, when we're eating carbohydrates and we get this blood sugar insulin response, what goes up has to come back down again. And if insulin is on this roller coaster, as we like to see it, then we see a knock-on effect with the other blood sugar hormones. So if we go back to them, so if our insulin is doing this because we're eating carbohydrates, then we are not going to be producing the right levels of leptin. We're not going to be producing the right levels of CCK, and we're not going to be producing the right levels of ghrelin. So we're going to be hungry a lot. We are never going to be full. I don't know if you've had that experience. I know I have. Just keep on eating and eating and eating. And just, where is this hunger coming from? And it can be coming from a blood sugar instability. And the thing that is really misunderstood about carbohydrates, because people understand that pasta, for example, and rice are carbohydrates, but so is fruit and vegetables. So are things like lentils and chickpeas. So this is an issue that I get with vegan diets, is that they consider them proteins. And yes, lentils and chickpeas have protein in them, but they have double the amount of carbohydrate than protein. So they get put into the carbohydrate category. So if we are looking at balancing our blood sugars, the things that I'm interested in is, what protein are you eating? And protein, we're looking at meat, fish, eggs, and tofu. Tofu is an interesting one because soy can be a bit estrogenic, so that's got another hormone knock-on effect. I'm interested in your fats. And this is like going back to that original thing that I was saying about, we are the generation of women. Our mothers, I know my mum did the Weight Watchers, did the kind of low fat, it was the ski yogurts. I remember the ski yogurts from when I was little, and did margarines, and fat was demonized. And so we are the generation of women who are born out of women who didn't eat fat. And we need fat. Fat is, it balances our blood sugars, it produces our hormones, it makes our skin and our hair, muscles and our fat cells. Fat is incredibly important. And in this role, it's for blood sugar stability. So if you are, I'm interested in your protein, I'm interested in your fats, and I'm interested in your carbohydrates. And having a balance of all three, each time you eat, you're going to have to look at your plate. This is absolutely a hormone balancing diet, is, okay, where's my protein, where's my fat, and what's my carbohydrate? And the difficulty with a lot of carbohydrates, things like pasta and bread and porridge, if you've got digestive issues, then particularly, or immune issues, or hormone issues, a lot of the carbohydrate grains can be very inflammatory. And when we've got inflammatory foods going in, we have a knock-on effect with digestion, we have a knock-on effect with hormones, which I'll go into a bit more detail after I've gone through blood sugars. So that's one part of the triangle. Let's look at stress hormones. We work with the endocrine. So the endocrine it's our hormone system, it's our glandular system, and it produces all these different hormones, and they all work together. And this was such an aha moment for me when I discovered the endocrine system, because this tells us when someone comes in and they've got digestive problems, and they're tired, and they're wired, and they're sugar craving, and they've got infections and headaches, and they can't control their weight, I'm going, okay, I want to look at your entire hormone system. So we've got the hypothalamus, which is our nervous system, which is our senses. So this is our sight, sound, hearing, taste, touch, smell. And this tells the body what is around us, what stress is around us, what if it's too cold, then it will tell our body to produce goosebumps so that we warm up. We've got the pineal gland it produces serotonin and melatonin, so this helps us sleep. One of the biggest things that I see with hormone dysregulation, and particularly with menopause, is insomnia, which is menosomnia, which is just looks horrendous. Pituitary gland is the conductor of the orchestra. So the pituitary gland tells all the hormones, tells all the glands what to produce when. The thyroid gland is really important, particularly for women. And this is coming back to the weight issue, because the thyroid gland is for our metabolism. And so if we have weight that we can't lose, or we're not able to balance our weight, we're not able to find a healthy weight, it can be because the thyroid gland is imbalanced. And there is this relationship between the thyroid gland and the ovaries. They do communicate with each other. Symptoms for the thyroid gland: cold all the time, cold hands and feet, hair thinning. Like I said, the weight is an issue. Thymus is our immune system. It's like the school where T cells go to learn how to be T cells. The pancreas, which is our blood sugars, so that's what I was saying earlier about all the different hormones that are produced in the pancreas. The adrenal glands, this is our stress response, our fight or flight or freeze, and our adrenal glands are on the go all the time. They are stimulated by coffee, by screaming kids, by alarm clocks, by stress at work, by stress at home, by technology, by xenoestrogens. The adrenal glands are constantly being triggered. And then we've got the testes and the ovaries. And what we see is when there is a lot of stress in a woman, then she starts to get these symptoms like she's tired and wired, or she's craving sugars, because this relationship between the glandular system, because they all work together, because the pituitary gland is constantly checking in with each gland going, okay, what's going on? What's going on? If the adrenals are going, there's a saber-toothed tiger that's chasing me, then the body is not going to be producing estrogen, progesterone. It's not going to be producing all of our calming hormones. It's not going to be balancing our sugars, because it's trying to get away from what it sees as the stress. So
I think it was really interesting what you were saying about the fact that actually the tired and wired, like as a mother, that's constantly how we're feeling, constantly feeling really, really exhausted, but then really wired at the same time. And yeah, I can really relate to that. And also the ups and downs of the sugar cravings and the grabbing convenient food. I mean, one of the questions that we had for you was like, how do we start to really balance that? Because when you're exhausted, particularly new mums, you just grab quick, easy foods and you get that instant lift, and then woof, straight back down again. And like, it's just trying to balance that. And it's all very well like knowing that we should have these wonderful like healthy sort of balanced lifestyle, we should get all the sleep in the world that we want, but it's so hard to actually get it, isn't it? It's just really, really difficult to get that balance. What's your advice on that?
Oh, we absolutely have it stacked against us. So there are absolutely some hacks that we can use to support our body, and we have to support our body. I mean, we've got families to look after, and we've got jobs to do, and if we don't look after our bodies, then they will scream at us. They absolutely will. When someone comes into my clinic with anxiety, the first place I am looking is blood sugars, because so if you're eating that, I've just got to eat something quickly, and the sugar comes up and the insulin comes up and then it comes crashing back down again, there is this direct relationship. You get a release of cortisol and adrenaline. So the body goes, whoa, blood sugars are going low. We need to go and get, this is the 11 o'clock. I need a biscuit. I just need a biscuit. If you've eaten a carbohydrate, if you've eaten a bowl of cereal in the morning, which is just kind of carbs, and a little bit of fat in milk, which is usually what we're intolerant to. But if you've had a very carbohydrate diet, or a bowl of porridge even, if you've had that, then your sugars come up and you go, right, okay, I've got the energy, but then they come crashing back down again, and you feel a bit jittery and a bit anxious, and then you're needing that snack. There are absolutely hacks that we can look at. So snacking regular through the day is a good idea, but it's got to be the right snacks. The first place I'll be looking at is food intolerances. So food intolerances we tend to crave. The big food intolerances I see are wheat, milk, sugar. They tend to be the big three. So cutting them out, because when we eat things we're intolerant to, and I could go into why they're kind of non-foods, they're anti-nutrients. When we eat foods that we're intolerant to, we get an adrenaline response. So it feels quite good and it can be addictive. But again, you know, as your blood sugars come up and then they crash back down again, a couple of hours later, we're jittery and we're wired and we're anxious and we can't cope and we can't deal with things. And so having a snack, having a decent breakfast where you go, okay, right, where's my protein? Where's my fats? And am I eating carbohydrates that I'm not intolerant to? So, and then you have a snack at 11 o'clock. Again, where's my protein? Where's my fat? Where's my carbohydrate? I would also say adaptogenic herbs, which is something, it's a bit like like a medicine that I would use. It's a natural medicine that I would use in my clinic, are game changers. They are amazing for hacking hormones in a really natural, wonderful way. If you've got anxiety or if you've got blood sugar instability, taking the right adaptogen can be a real lifesaver. And my other favorite is magnesium. Honestly, I don't know where I would be without magnesium. And
you always talk about magnesium, and I've just bought myself some, I don't know what your opinion on this is, but I've literally just bought myself some Epsom salt baths and been soaking in magnesium. Is that something you would recommend?
Yes, I mean, it's the nice thing is that can be really relaxing, but the truth is, I mean, we used to have magnesium in our food and it's kind of gone. It used to be in our soil and it's gone. And so the levels of magnesium that we're needing, we kind of need to, you know, eating it, snorting it, sitting in it, drinking it, you know, magnesium is totally something that I would be recommending. Looking at sex hormones, I loved this chart. I was I usually do talks on women's health, but this is the first one that I've done on pregnancy and postnatal. And I found this line graph and I was like, oh wow, look what happens to our hormones. So this is at the beginning of the chart is where we're conceiving, and then we've got the first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and you can see with the green, woo, where oxytocin, where we give birth, and oxytocin goes nuts. And so let's look at each of these. You've got lots of different hormones there. The ones I'm interested in, estrogen, I am really interested in. Estrogen is there's three different types of estrogens. There's one for pregnancy, there's one for menopause, and there's one for fertility. And it is really important to have it in balance. And estrogen is what makes us curvy, and it's what makes us fertile, and it's what makes us look youthful. And estrogen it's a wonderful, wonderful hormone when it's in balance. And you can see this massive rise of estrogen that happens in pregnancy, and then it just kind of falls off the face of the earth after we give birth. And what I love is that if you look up estrogen, this kind of approach to, and then you just don't produce estrogen anymore and you just clear it out of your body. The difficulty we've got is if we have an overwhelmed liver and we've got a digestion that's struggling, we're not going to be able to clear that estrogen down. And so what the body does is it stores it in fat cells, and this is where we get the bums and the hips. It's estrogen that is just stored because the body goes, I don't know what to do with this. Progesterone, the more I do this work, the more I see how utterly important progesterone is and how utterly misunderstood it is. So the traditional medical approach is that progesterone is just for carrying the baby. It is important in they recognize it for fertility treatment, for example. What they don't recognize is that progesterone is so important for women. It's our karma, it's our calming hormone, and we produce it even before puberty. We produce progesterone, women do, and we need it to feel healthy. It's our anti-inflammatory, it's our karma, it's a hormone that, and I'm going to explain more why it just disappears, that the issues that we are facing as women is not because it's mainly because there is a deficiency of progesterone. Yes, estrogen gets out of control, and we are seeing estrogen dominance, which is where we're storing estrogen, which is where our bums and our hips and where we're exhausted is coming from. But a big player of this is because progesterone falls off. And when we go through things like menopause, and progesterone is non-existent, this is why our menopauses are getting so much rougher. So this is the female cycle. This is a traditional 4-week cycle. And you see the estrogen, it's what kicks our ovulation into touch. And so one of the questions I think that you've got is, when looking at fertility, what are you going to be looking at? And one of the first things I'm going to be thinking about is what is going on with estrogen. And the difficulty with the world that we live in is it is very estrogenic. So I mentioned earlier about these chemicals in our toiletries that mimic estrogen in the body. So the body thinks they're estrogen, like things like parabens, and it goes to process it and it struggles. So then it stores it, and it stores it in fat cells. So I want to be knowing what's going on with estrogen with a woman who is looking at fertility, or a woman who is struggling to lose weight after she's given birth. Then we see progesterone, and progesterone, it starts after ovulation. It is designed to hold the pregnancy, and so you can see that it massively increases, and it is greater than estrogen in between week 3 and week 4, and then when we have our period, then it drops off. You see with testosterone has its little whoop. We do have testosterone as women, and it has a little increase at ovulation, and testosterone is all about libido. So this is why when we're ovulating, we're like, oh, you look nice. And that is testosterone. Thank you very much, testosterone. And so these 3 hormones in our cycle absolutely need to be in balance. If we're going to fall pregnant, if we're going to have a healthy pregnancy, if we're going to feel okay after we've given birth. And what we're seeing, like I said, is that because we've got xenoestrogens in our environment, because we're not able to detox and process our estrogens effectively, then we're seeing this estrogen dominance, this estrogen builds up in the body. And when estrogen goes high, then progesterone goes low, because the two have this interplay together. And progesterone, where estrogen is the stimulator and it's an inflammatory hormone, we've got the balance of progesterone, which is our calmer and is anti-inflammatory. And I think we've had some questions about bloating. Well, absolutely, I'd be looking at estrogen and progesterone. What's going on with estrogen and progesterone if there is bloating? I love this. I love this as a model. It's called the pregnenolone steal, which is a bit of a misnomer, because it's not that the body steals pregnenolone, it's that the body prioritizes. What happens to pregnenolone? Pregnenolone is a precursor hormone. And the body decides, it checks out the environment, it goes, okay, what's going on in the world? And the body decides, do I want to produce lovely calming progesterone because everything's fine and I'm safe to have a baby? Or do I want to produce cortisol because there are monsters chasing me? And so the big thing that I am looking at with women who are struggling with fertility is what is going on with progesterone because of cortisol. What is going on with her stress? And this was absolutely my experience of 3 years. I was running a health center at the time. I was like wired onto the ceiling. You tend to find with women that, yes, wired and tired can be an experience. Some women get really knotted and really, and some women are exhausted when it comes to stress. I'm one of those women that gets faster and faster and quicker and more anxious. And so I was producing loads of cortisol. I was under a lot of stress. My body wasn't producing the right levels of progesterone. My body wasn't saying that it was safe to produce a baby. And so absolutely, we've got to be looking at stress. The thyroid, because of this interplay between the endocrine system, a lot of thyroid issues that I see in women, I'm looking at stress first, because if the adrenals go down, then it kind of knocks the thyroid out next. And there is this interplay between estrogen and thyroid. So if there's too much estrogen in the body, we tend to have an underactive thyroid, and an underactive thyroid is weight gain. And if there's an estrogen deficiency, then we tend to see an overactive thyroid, which is weight loss. And so it can be quite common with any kind of hormone change that we go through. So this can be like a thyroid condition can be triggered after pregnancy and after postnatal, after giving birth, and during perimenopause and through menopause. So we really see that the thyroid again is a bit of a victim of what's going on with the whole endocrine. So that's the triangle. When the triangle is off, what's going on with our digestive system and our immune system? And it's when women come in and they're saying to me, okay, I've got bloating, I've got IBS, I've got cramps, I've got constipation, I've got diarrhea. I am looking at that triangle first. I'm going, okay, right, where's your blood sugars imbalance? What's going on with your stress? What's going on with your estrogen, progesterone? But it is important to consider the gut microbiome, because what the gut microbiome does is incredibly sensitive to carbs. So I'm going to come back to the imbalance of carbohydrates that we're eating, because if we're eating too many carbohydrates, if we're eating too many foods with pesticides on, if we're on regular medication, or if we're on the pill, or if we're eating food intolerances, then this bacteria in the gut produces something called endotoxins, which creates inflammation. And when there's inflammation in the body, then we start to get a lot of symptoms. And the important thing when it comes to hormones is that the gut microbiome detoxes estrogen. So when we've got estrogen floating through the body, the liver detoxes it, and then either puts it through the kidney pathway, or it puts it into the bowels. And if the bowels don't have this balance of bacteria, then the estrogen ends up getting reabsorbed into the body and reprocessed into the body. And so then this is another reason why we see estrogen dominance. So you saw that graph when we go through pregnancy, we got estrogen up here, we've got progesterone up here, and then we give birth, and our body is naturally meant to process and detoxify all this estrogen. If our guts aren't happy because we've been on the pill, because we've taken antibiotics, because we're taking all these medications, then the body goes, oh, I can't do it, so I'm just going to reabsorb it. And then
I think that's such a good point, because I've got a couple of clients in clinic at the moment in my physio clinic that have been on antibiotics as a result of strep B, or as a result of urine infections and recurring bladder infections, or just previously, prior to pregnancy, they spent a lot of time, like you said yourself, with tonsillitis. I've had issues as well as a kid where I've had lots of repeated courses of antibiotics, and I do just genuinely think that like my gut microbiome and a lot of those of my clients is actually not in a particularly good place, like you just said. So what can, like, as a take-home point for somebody to help them if they have been taking lots of antibiotics in the past, and then maybe they're suffering with IBS and like irritated bowels and inflammation, and possibly this is not helping them with the absorption, what can we do to help that? Like, I was thinking about reducing the inflammation foods, like you've said, but what other things can you do?
Yeah, totally. I'm really passionate about spreading the message that only take antibiotics when you really, really need them. And I would recommend that with children as well, because I was taking them so regularly. And we've got a partnership with a gastroenterologist, and it was exciting for me to have this conversation with him, because I can feel that the medical model is starting to really understand the gut microbiome. As I went to go and see him about my digestive issues, and he said the antibiotics that you took on a regular basis at that crucial hormonal time in your life means that you probably will always struggle with your digestion. It's you kind of did it. And I was like, oh, I'm so amazed that you understand the gut microbiome. I'm so delighted that you're understanding it. Is this filtering down to the GPs? And he said no, that this is gastroenterology are understanding it, and because it just blows my mind that I go to one part of the NHS and I get recommended a lot of antibiotics, and then I go to the other part of the NHS and they say, well, the reason that you've got all these symptoms is because you took lots of antibiotics. I was like, I really hope that they start to bring those two messages together.
And as a mother, we've got to look after ourselves, but also it's really interesting because I'm learning this about how it's affected me as me as I grow up through adulthood, and I'm realizing, like, making decisions for my children, and like, you know, when to give them antibiotics and when not to, and obviously that, like, antibiotics can be life-saving. Like, it's not a big hater on antibiotics. They're really important when they're necessary, but definitely when I was younger, they were massively overused with myself, and it does explain a lot. And I think that's really interesting, and hopefully we are learning more about how this is affecting our digestion as women and as a population, but particularly for us as women, how it's affecting our children, but then how this then affects our hormones. Like, right, how this is something that initially I just didn't put the two together, and you've done it so nicely about how digestion and how our gut microbiome actually affects our hormones as women and our estrogen dominance, and then how that links to fertility and weight gain and all of these, you know, topics that are just so interesting. So
it's my personal experience was, so I've from all the antibiotic usage, and then I had a surgery which triggered autoimmune, and what was fascinating about going into pregnancy is that my autoimmune disappeared. I was like, this is amazing. And this is because I had these incredibly high levels of things like progesterone, which is anti-inflammatory, and the body naturally reduces the immune system through pregnancy because it doesn't want to attack the fetus. So I had some autoimmune conditions can get worse through pregnancy, but mine got better, and I thought, this is brilliant. And then after I gave birth, for the first time in my life, I had proper saddlebags. I had a big bum, and I was like, and I couldn't shift it because I had a dysbiosis. So all the estrogen that I produced in my pregnancy, I wasn't able to detoxify it effectively. And they recommend that women, you know, should be back in their genes 6 weeks after giving birth. And I was like, I mean, it's 3 years, he's 3, and I'm only just now really getting underneath it. And I see this with women all the time, and yeah, absolutely, our guts are so important. So if you have gone through, the way we look at the body, and this is so important, is start with the triangle. Because if you have high levels of estrogen, you have high levels of insulin and your blood sugar hormones like CCK, and you know, your ghrelin is all over the place, and you've got high cortisol, you know, your gut is such a victim to that. And so practitioners who go, okay, well, we must repair the gut, if you don't have that balance in with the triangle, the gut is just always going to be limping along. So we look at doing things in order. You're going to have to look at the triangle first, and then we look at gut repair. And it's been a lifelong journey of mine, and it's also something that I'm deeply passionate about, is learning about the gut. And there was a study done, it's the Human Microbiome Project, that was finished in 2010. I mean, we're only just starting to really understand the microbiome. It's such new science, and discovering that we are way more bug than we are human. Like the pathogens, the viruses, the bacteria, the fungus, we are way more that than we are human. And so when we come at pathogens with this sledgehammer, you know, there's something outside of us that is attacking us, and we've got to kill the enemy. There's something I've felt really passionately about going through COVID, is that when we understand that it's our environment that is as much to play in this as it is the external pathogens that are getting us, when we really start to understand that we need to come into balance with bugs and with bacteria and with viruses, that is when we'll really start to see a change in our health.
I love that.
Yeah, let's go straight onto the immune system. The immune system, it's wonderfully complicated. I mean, it's such a rabbit hole to go down, but in its simplest form, it is our natural response to foreign agents. And so when there is an immune system response going on, when there's autoimmune, when there's frequent infections, when there's frequent bladder infections, I'm going, what is the body trying to tell us? What is the body receiving as something it needs to attack? And the things that I'm looking at, food intolerances for sure, toxins and xenoestrogens, so that is cleaning up your skincare, that is cleaning up, making sure you're going organic, that is cleaning up your household products, making sure that you're not absorbing all of these xenoestrogens and these toxins so that your body's going. Something I see in autoimmune so much, breast implants. I mean, I don't know if your audience have breast implants, but if there's such a connection between breast implants and autoimmune condition triggering. And the thing with autoimmune conditions is they tend to come in pairs or threes or fours. So you get one, and then you develop another one, and then you develop another one, because it's the immune system that is trying to say there's something wrong. Chronic infections. So like I said, we've been living with all these pathogens for millennia, but it's only now that we're really, really starting to struggle with them because of the health of our bodies. Our environments are coming into contact with these pathogens, and our bodies aren't equipped to be able to clear them. So the liver, for example, is an immune organ. It produces immune cells. And so if the liver is massively overwhelmed with having to deal with all the toxins and all the pesticides and all of the food intolerances, it's not going to be able to do its job there with doing its immune job. So immune system and digestion, I'll come back to the triangle, and then we look at the immune system and the digestive system. And oh, the lovely liver. The liver does loads and loads of jobs, but the big important role here is it's producing hormones and it's clearing them out. So you've got to be producing good quality, so make sure your good quality fats are going in, and you've got to be clearing it out. And so when I'm balancing the triangle in someone and I'm looking at digestion and the immune, the other thing that I'm looking at is supporting the liver to be able to detox estrogen more effectively. And this can be just such a game changer. This is something that I've really been experiencing. This is the thing that has been unlocking my health of being able to lose the baby weight, is supporting the liver's role to be able to clear the excess estrogen down, and supporting my digestion to be able to filter it out.
So is there a supplement or something that you take specifically to help your liver?
Yeah, there's 3 that I work with that are quite technical. There's something called DIM, which helps the body metabolize estrogen more effectively. There's something called NAC, which is an amino acid, and there is something called calcium deglucarate, which is another one that helps the body clear estrogen out of the body. So we have something called a symptom assessor, which is free to do if you go to symptomassessor.co.uk. And it will give you a very clear answer of where you need to be working first in the triangle. Do you need to be looking at your digestion? Do you need to look at your immune system? Do you need to be looking at your blood sugars, stress, hormones? And then when you get recommended your pathway, then if it is hormones that you need to be focusing on, then we've got something where we have a questionnaire where we help people decide what estrogen cleanser to be able to take.
And those things, can they be found in foods, or is that something?
DIM, yeah, for sure. Cruciferous veggies. So up your broccolis and your cauliflowers and your cabbages and greens, green veggies. If you don't want to, if supplements aren't your thing, although a lot of women can really benefit from being on the right supplements, you can support your body through diet, and the liver loves green veggies. Xenoestrogens I've talked about. So these are the big things that we look at: food intolerances, sedentary lifestyles. You've got to move the body. I think you mentioned this about exercise. This is the thing that drives me nuts, is if personal trainers, for example, if a woman's given birth or menopausal and they say, well, you just got to move your body more and you've got to eat less. It drives me nuts.
No, 100%, because like what we know so much, and I've spoken about this in so many of my talks, is that the stress on our body is what causes us to store the fat. So if we're exercising and punishing ourselves because we hate our bodies, and a lot of us are so guilty of this postnatally, when we're exercising out of hatred for ourselves, almost like I want to lose the weight, I want to lose the weight, I want to lose the weight, we're actually, when we're maybe beasting ourselves and working too hard, we're actually causing more cortisol and stress to go through our body. So then sometimes you can be exercising loads, reducing your calories, but by doing that, you are putting stress on your body. You're putting stress because you're trying to work too hard, maybe when you're sleep deprived, and actually all you need to do is rest. And then you are trying to reduce your weight, and you're reducing the amount of food you're eating, and so you're putting stress because you're almost going to starvation mode. So all of these things then create increase in storage of our fat cells, rather than the desired effect of why we're doing it so much, which is to reduce it. So with Flyman, we're really trying to encourage and teach our women to love and honor their bodies and what their bodies have achieved. And then think about this holistic approach, which is brilliant. You're mentioning this so much, Laura, and really thinking about the stresses in our bodies and those inflammatory factors, whether that be like you've got on the slides here, your food intolerance, your lifestyle, your lack of movement or excessive movement in the wrong patterns, and then stress and sleep and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'm so with you. I'm so with you. I'd love to understand a bit more about some of the classic intolerances. And I know it's not for everybody, but it was interesting how you said you often crave the things you're intolerant to. So how many of us as mums go and grab that chocolate and that the sugar and the dairy, or like the gluten and the wheat? And it's not to say they're all demons, but definitely I noticed postnatally it ramped up with me. I just craved it and just grabbed it, and it was like the more I got, the worse I felt, but then the better I felt, so the more I got, and it was just this perpetual cycle.
Totally. And when there's high stress, I mean, come back to the triangle, when there's high stress, when there's cortisol going around the body, your body's going, okay, I've got to get out of here. I'm going to need fuel. I'm going to need fast fuel. I'm going to need sugar, get that sugar in. And so when there's stress, then we're going to be craving. And so if you are beasting your body at the gym and producing loads of cortisol because you're nailing it, then you're going to be craving sugar more, which is going to be producing more insulin, which is going to be more fat storage. And so the women that I see who come in and they're barely eating anything and they've piled on the weight and they're slogging themselves at the gym, I'm like, whoa, there's such a misunderstanding of calories in, calories out. It's rubbish. When we're looking at food, we want to be looking at good, wholesome food. Anything that's kind of processed, just clear that out. We want to be making sure we're coming back to basics. We want healthy, organic, grass-fed meat, fish. We want some organic eggs, if we can tolerate them. We want good fats. We want olive oils. We want fruit and veg. That's what we need. That's what we thrive on. And if someone comes in and they say, I'm really craving something, then we're going, okay, right, we need to be looking at maybe some nutritional deficiencies. So we'll come back to magnesium, because that's a classic chocolate craving supplement. So yeah, and I'm going to be looking at blood sugars. We got to balance your blood sugars. If you're craving food, then there's something going on with the triangle.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
It's choosing organic. There's the glyphosate that they put on fields is this anti-nutrient that when we digest it is like a bomb for our gut microbiome. And so this understanding, it's also a xenoestrogen, the body doesn't know what to do with it, it's antibacterial. And so we're regularly eating glyphosate that they spray, and there's some crazy stuff that they do with glyphosate. So they not only use it as a pesticide when they're growing the grains, but they also use it to dry the grains out. So you get a double whammy of glyphosate that they're putting on grains. It's why grains are one of the big intolerances that I look at. Sometimes it's not the grain that's the problem, it's the glyphosate. And we're putting that into our digestion, which is like an antibiotic. And so then we are not able to digest our food, we're not able to take the goodness from our food, we're not able to detoxify our hormones. So really do consider organic. The veganism issue, there are healthy ways of doing veganism, absolutely, but there's trying to get quality protein into a vegan diet is something I really struggle with. And vegan diets are so carbohydrate rich. And so we're back on that insulin roller coaster, which is then causing stress in the body, which is then having a knock-on effect with our estrogen and progesterone. So there are ways that if I was a vegetarian for 20 years, and I was a terrible vegetarian. I mean, I ate rubbish. And I do think that part of the reason that I struggled in my 20s was because I was a very bad vegetarian. So I would reconsider finding ways of being able to be an ethical meat eater or a fish eater, or at least fish, because then that's a protein that we can get into your diet. I'm guessing that Michelle's gone to do childcare. Reviewing contraception. So this issue around the pill being a stimulator, it also affects our digestion. So if you can review your contraception, find natural alternatives to contraception, it's really, really going to help with hormone balancing. Taking the pill is not balancing your hormones, no matter what the doctors say. It's suppressing and overriding your hormones. These are the big supplements that I'd be looking at. The vitamins that we work with. Hi, Michelle. Childcare.
No, the dog this time. It's the fur baby. Fur baby going mental.
The big minerals I'll be looking at: magnesium, zinc, selenium. The vitamins I'll be looking at: the antioxidants, vitamin A, vitamin C. Vitamin D, good grief, vitamin D acts like a hormone in the body, and we get it from the sun, and of course being in the UK we don't get it for half the year. So vitamin D can be just it's immune system and fertility and all this kind of stuff. Omega fats, less omega-6, which is in a lot of grains, and more omega-3, which is in fish. Adaptogenic herbs, which I've mentioned. If you want further advice on that, then please do contact me, because there are specific adaptogenic herbs that, for example, bring down anxiety, that increase fertility, that reduce cortisol, or help us manage with cortisol better. I work with digestive herbs. I do some gut repair, but I work with the triangle first for sure, and then those estrogen detox supplements that I mentioned. I've got some other tips. I appreciate it. How we do for time?
What I might do, it's a massive topic, and I think that you've gone into so much detail, which is really, really helpful. What we do is we do another few minutes of this, and then I'm going to deliberately stop the recording so our members can unmute themselves and ask you if that's okay. And we'll still stream it live on our membership site on Facebook, but we'll stop the recording so that everyone can talk freely and ask you some questions, if that's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so up for the questions. It's a beautiful way, something that I teach my clients, and also I teach in my school, is how women can come into connection with their cycle. And men are quite linear. They have testosterone cycle, 24-hour testosterone cycle, but they don't have this cycle through the month, this 28-day experience. So when we really understand, so in the winter of our cycle, so when we're having our period, we've got to rest. And if we rest in our bleed, then we will find pre-ovulation, we're kind of, wow, with loads of ideas, loads of motivation. Ovulation, we are super women. And what I also love working with, and Michelle knows this from working with me, is autumn. A lot of women get that pre-menstrual, they get frustrated, they get intolerant, and a lot of women try to override it. I like to work with it. I think that this is a time of truth. I think that if women can really align their hormones and be able to work with how they're feeling, I mean, magic can happen. This is one of the things that I specialize in, is anger work with women, and I just love it. And this is such a great time of the month to really get the anger out, and then you detox when you have your periods. So the more that we can be cyclical, the healthier we can be.
I absolutely love that, because Kelly and I, we are really into looking at the moon and the moon cycle and the seasons, and we also look at trying to cycle our digestion. We read a really interesting book that opened our eyes up with this as well, and I've mentioned it in some of the other talks, and all of these things, and the way we all align. I think we could do a whole talk on this at another time, if that's all right. I'm going to invite you back, Laura, because I love it, because it's definitely something that we're interested in. And with our series with Heal, Rebuild and Thrive, yes, it's an obvious progression as you're exercising to build yourself up through the heal stage, to then to do the rebuild and strengthening, and then the thrive stage. But what I mentioned in our previous chat was actually how we also have deliberately designed it so that you can work with your cycle and try to work with the exercise and the movements and the mindset work that comes with that, to optimize where you are in your cycle. So the healing side of it, really thinking about the menstruation and the sort of calming, maybe going into the lunar, into the menstruation phase, the rebuild, coming back and regenerating through the follicular phase, and then the thriving is like ovulation. It's like, let's go party, let's go socialize, let's go. So like 100% we're really with you, but I think we might run out of time to talk too much more about this.
Yeah,
are you happy for me to
of course.
Thank
we
you,
can do
everybody.
a whole emotional women and
we could talk for days, Laura. Honestly, there's so much content here, and it's so lovely to really get an insight. So how do people contact you in future if they need to, in terms of contacting you for where have you gone?
Oh,
can you stop
seeing me? Yeah.
Oh yeah, perfect. Yeah, how do people
stay in touch you? There you go. Well, I've got my college. You can come follow us on Instagram and Facebook. We've got balancedwellness.uk or the College of Functional Wellness, depending on what you're interested in. So the Balanced Wellness is my clinic. So that is for women who are looking to balance their hormones. And then the college, if you want to learn more about this, the College of Functional Wellness, which is the training courses that we do. And we do online training courses.
Actually, so that's really interesting, because we although we're a platform for mums like myself, we've attracted a lot of practitioners. So I'm sure there's going to be lots of people like myself that are practitioners as well, that maybe be interested in that. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now. Members, please